class. If I remember correctly, you were talking something about the cell, right? So what are the organelles of a cell, of a eukaryotic cell? What are the organelles of a eukaryotic cell? तो कल की क्लास में we discussed a eukaryotic cell and its organelles and the function of each of these organelles. So try to name some of these organelles that we discussed. What are the organelles present inside a cell? Achha, who is the brain of the cell? Let's suppose we go from there. Who is the brain of the cell? Which organelle is called the brain of the cell? अरे बाप रे, खाली मैं बोलते रहा और आप सुने नहीं तो पॉइंटलेस हो जाता अपन क्लास लेना ना. Yesterday we talked about certain organelles. One was nucleus, which I told you is the brain of the cell. You'll have to read after I take the class. You read it wherever, online पढ़ो, कैसे भी पढ़ो. I think I've already given my textbook to you in your this thing. आपके ग्रुप में डाल दिया था एक बायोकेमिस्ट्री टेक्स्ट बुक. You can use any basic biochemistry textbook. It is not particularly. अब तो आप इधर भी है. You can go and buy a textbook if you want to. If not, you can use any digital copies, whatever is useful to you. Okay, but you have to make sure that you are reading. Okay, nucleus is the brain of the cell. Why is it called the brain of the cell? What does it do? Nucleus का काम क्या है? What are the functions of nucleus? अरे अच्छा, एक काम करो, आज की क्लास make sure that you read. Yeah, read about the functions of all of these organelles. I'll ask you again. Tell me tomorrow. Okay. This will be very bad if you're not able
Yes,
to
sir.
anything. If you're not able to answer anything, it's pointless to take classes. आपके भेजे में घुसा नहीं तो पॉइंट क्या है मैं क्लास लेके. मेरा भी और आपका भी टाइम वेस्ट हो रहा ना.
The nucleus organs.
I just heard some voice. I was not able to clearly make out what you were trying to tell. अच्छा ठीक है. Today we'll start with cell membrane. What is cell membrane? How it looks. ठीक है. उसको प्लाज्मा मेम्ब्रेन क्यों बोलते हैं, उसके अंदर क्या रहते हैं, and what is fluid mosaic model. So your plasma membrane or your cell membrane looks like this. Another image that you can see which will be floating around the internet will be this. ठीक है. I'm sure आप लोगों को fluid mosaic model already internet और intermediate में पढ़ाए होंगे या फिर school level में पढ़ाए होंगे, but we'll go into slightly more detail compared to what you have already been taught. If you were not taught, just make sure that you listen carefully. Okay. Now, your plasma membrane is a very, very important component of your cell because it is making sure your cell has a certain shape. Okay. That cell membrane also keeps all the components, including the cytoplasm, inside the cell, and it will make sure that it is isolated from the outside. If there is anything outside that may damage the cell, your cell membrane will act as a protection towards, against any physical or chemical environment that can damage these cell organelles. Any molecule that can damage the cell organelle, usse bachata hai essentially. Now, cell membrane also allows your cell organelles to maintain a particular internal environment. Internal environment का मतलब ये है कि those cell organelles can work in peace essentially. ठीक है, they can perform their daily duty without being disturbed. Without the presence of plasma membrane or without the presence of a functioning plasma membrane, those cell organelles might be damaged or they might not be able to work properly. Okay. Now to explain how, what is the structure of the cell membrane, there are several theories that were proposed. One very popular theory is fluid mosaic model. ठीक है, इसको फ्लूइड मोज़ेक मॉडल इसलिए बोलते हैं क्योंकि see, द मेम्ब्रेन एसेंशियली इसको ऐसा डिस्क्राइब कर रहा है कि प्रोटीन्स जो है मेम्ब्रेन में, दोज आर लाइक आइसबर्ग्स एंड दे आर प्रेजेंट इन अ सी ऑफ लिपिड्स. So if you look carefully at the structure of your cell membrane, there is a phospholipid layer and वो phospholipid layer के बीच में proteins है. ठीक है, now you can have different types of proteins in that layer itself. So for example, let's suppose एक phospholipid को लिया. Phospholipid क्या है? एक lipid layer है जिसको एक phosphate head है. ठीक है, उसको phosphate molecule attached है. Why is this important? That phosphate molecule will be the part which is facing the hydrophilic end. ठीक है, the phosphate part itself is hydrophilic, meaning जहां पर भी fluid है. अब ये image में let's suppose okay, this part is inside the cell. Let me write it this way. This is inside the cell and this is outside the cell. Right? This is outside the cell. ठीक है, अब on both the sides, inside लो या outside लो, directly outside the cell you will have interstitial fluid. Directly inside the cell you will have cytoplasm. Both of which are rich in fluids. ठीक है, तो वो fluid में आपका lipid नहीं रह सकता because your oil will not, any oil will not dissolve in fluid. That is the hydrophobic part. The lipid portion will be the fatty acid tail जो है, that is the hydrophobic part. उसलिए क्या होता, एक head attach होता, that head will be made up of phosphate. So if you look closely on the cell membrane, you will see two ends of the cell membrane. This is the top layer and this is the bottom layer. ठीक है, टॉप लेयर के ऊपर आपको फॉस्फेट हेड दिखेगा, बॉटम लेयर के नीचे आपको फॉस्फेट हेड दिखेगा. बीच में जहां पर देयर इज नो एक्सपोजर टू एनी फ्लूइड, दैट इज वेयर योर हाइड्रोफोबिक नॉन पोलर फैटी एसिड टेल्स विल stay. I'll repeat once again. Your cell membrane will have two different layers, the top layer and the bottom layer. ठीक है, they're essentially a single layer, but ऐसा ऊपर का नीचे का layer रहता. Imagine a very big sandwich. Okay, imagine you take two slices and you make a sandwich. Suppose Anjali is making a chicken cheese sandwich. Okay, example. तो उन्होंने क्या कर रहे हैं, एक स्लाइस ले रहे हैं, उसके ऊपर मेयोनेज लगा रहे हैं, उसके ऊपर थोड़ा नमक डाल रहे हैं, उसके ऊपर थोड़ा पेपर डाल रहे हैं, उसके ऊपर श्रेडेड चिकन डाल रहे हैं, उसके ऊपर चीज डाल रहे हैं, उसके ऊपर एक और लेयर रख रहे हैं एंड शी इज लेट्स सपोज हीटिंग इट. ओके, शी इज पुटिंग इट इन एन ओवन एंड शी इज हीटिंग इट. अब उसके बाद अंजलि वो चिकन चीज सैंडविच खा लेते हैं. अब बिफोर ईटिंग इट, इफ यू लुक एट दैट सैंडविच क्लोजली, you will see the top layer of that sandwich and you will see the bottom layer of that sandwich. Those top and bottom layers will act as phosphate head. ठीक है, that is the phosphate head. बीच में जो चीज डाले and chicken है, that will be the hydrophobic end and that will be the fatty acid tail. ये बीच में जो है, यहाँ पर अलग अलग components है आपके cell membrane में. Now you will have proteins, you can have glycoproteins, you can have cholesterol present all throughout your cell membrane altogether. I hope you are following along. If you have doubts, if you are not understanding anything, or if you want me to repeat anything, ask. Okay, don't be shy, ask. I will not be able to tell whether you are not understanding or not unless you tell me. Okay, make it a point to ask doubts. Now, as I was telling you, through fluid mosaic model essentially proposes that your cell membrane is like a sea. It's like a sea of lipids. Okay, not see the alphabet, see the water body. Okay, it's like a sea of alphabet, sea of lipids, and in that sea of lipids you will have small icebergs. Okay, those icebergs are essentially your protein molecules. I'm sure you've seen Titanic. In the movie Titanic, that ship sunk down because it hit an iceberg and the people inside the ship drowned. The same thing is here. Proteins को आप यहाँ पर iceberg बोल रहे हैं. एंड जो सी है, जो ओशन है, उसको आप लिपिड से इक्वेट कर रहे हो, ठीक है। Now the two layers of phospholipid molecules form a very viscous fluid matrix. ठीक है, they'll make a viscous fluid matrix. There will be a very thick layer, ठीक है, which is impermeable to water soluble molecules. Meaning, if I have anything which is water soluble, that molecule cannot come from outside to inside. मतलब let us suppose हाँ, यहाँ पर एक water soluble molecule है. Because these are so viscous, this layer is so viscous, and because it has a hydrophobic end in between, this fellow will not allow, this cannot happen, ठीक है, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता. कोई भी water soluble molecule जो है वो directly ऐसा enter नहीं हो सकता. On the flip side, if you have a hydrophilic molecule, something that gets dissolved inside fat very easily, that molecule will be able to come very easily. Because बीच में जो fatty acid tails है वो बहुत conducive है. They are allowing a lipid molecule to come inside, but they will not allow any hydrophilic component or any component that is soluble in water to come inside. ठीक है, any molecule that is soluble in water to come inside directly. That molecule has to use a protein to come inside. ठीक है. Now, protein molecules will occur as separate particles. They will generally be asymmetric. Okay? There is no symmetry in between their distribution. If you look at the chemical composition of your this thing, cell membrane, you will, the main components that are making the cell membrane will be your lipids, proteins, carbohydrates. ठीक है, ये तीन बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. नाउ जो लिपिड्स रहते हैं आपके पास, लेसिथिन रहता है, सेफेलिन, सिंगोमाइलिन, कोलेस्ट्रॉल दिखता है आपको, अलग अलग टाइप के लिपिड्स रहते हैं. प्रोटीन्स में भी यू मेनली सी आर्जिनिन, you see lysine, sometimes you will also see histidine, different amino acids will be present. अब एक protein molecule जो है, that is made up of peptides. Peptides are made up of single amino acid. So imagine आप how should I put it? Let us suppose you are playing with Legos. Okay, I hope all of you know what Legos are. छोटे छोटे blocks जो आते हैं छोटे बच्चों को खेलने के blocks जो रहते हैं, those are called Legos. Okay, LEGO. Those Legos, let's suppose you want to make a tower out of those Legos. So what you'll have to do, you will have to make a foundation first. Your foundation बनाने के लिए you have to arrange the Legos together, and on top of that you have to keep another layer, and you have to repeat the process again and again. Proteins are essentially made the same way. एक amino acid लेते, उसको फिर एक amino acid attach करते. You attach several such amino acids together, and you keep on doing that on layer upon layer, sheet upon sheet, essentially, where you get peptides. बहुत सारे peptide sheets अगर बना दिए तो you get a protein. Okay, when we discuss metabolism of protein, I'll go into more detail, but essentially that is how proteins are made. Now, inside your cell membrane, you will have different amino acids. You'll also find a few carbohydrates like hexosin, hexosamine, hexosamine fructose specifically, sialic acid. ये पूरे carbohydrates भी present है. Now, if you look at the actual composition, it will differ from tissue to tissue. ठीक है, जो cell membrane की जो composition है, the lung tissue में इसकी composition थोड़ी अलग रहती है compared to let's suppose bone tissue. आपकी हड्डी में जो cell membrane है, उसकी cell membrane अलग रहेगी when compared to maybe a softer organ like a lung or your liver. ठीक है, maybe in between soft organs as well, there is difference in between your cell membrane. ठीक है, about 40% of whatever lipid content will be present inside your cell membrane are present in the form of phospholipids. ठीक है, 40% of all the lipids that are present in your cell membrane are present as phospholipids. तो ये जो आपको हेड्स दिख रहे हैं, those are phospholipids. ठीक है, जो येलो कलर के हेड दिख रहे हैं उसके नीचे ब्लैक कलर की टेल दिख रही, those are phospholipids. It is a phosphate molecule which is attached to a lipid end. ठीक है, I hope you are understanding. If you are not understanding, if you want me to repeat, please feel free to ask. Or if you want me to repeat anything or whatever, have a doubt.
No, sir.
पक्का समझ में आ रहा पूरों को?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Lot of lag. ठीक है, I'll take that as a yes. Now, आपके सेल मेम्ब्रेन में तीन मेन कंपोनेंट्स रहते हैं. एक तो मेम्ब्रेन लिपिड्स रहते हैं. मेम्ब्रेन के लेवल पे जो लिपिड्स है Then you have membrane proteins. Now if you look closely, you can see a bilipid layer as such. इसको लिपिड bilayer इसलिए बोलते हैं क्योंकि दो लेयर्स है, ऊपर एक लेयर है, नीचे एक लेयर है, एंड बीच में आपके लिपिड टेल्स है. तो ऊपर एक फॉस्फेट की चेन है, नीचे फॉस्फेट की चेन है, बीच में लिपिड्स, द हाइड्रोफोबिक एंड्स है. Because that fellow does not like water, it will tend to remain inside. Whatever is hydrophilic end, that will be exposed to the fluid part. Okay. And you have carbohydrates. You have carbohydrates, you have different proteins, and you have membrane lipids. First, we'll talk about the membrane lipids. See, the main type of membrane lipids that you see, because they are hydrophobic, they will generally tend to stay inside the this thing, inside the bilayer. So let's suppose if we equate it back to your chicken cheese sandwich, आपके chicken के pieces will be your lipids. Okay, generally अंदर रहते. They will not be like your bread pieces which are outside. Okay, because these chicken pieces, let's suppose in this scenario, are hydrophobic, they will tend to stay inside. Okay, अब कौन से type of lipids मिलते हैं आपको? You will see phospholipids, you will see sterols. Specifically, you will see cholesterol in this. Okay, because both of them are hydrophobic. Now you will have hydrophobic end and hydrophilic end as well. Some lipids, they will be amphipathic. ठीक है, amphipathic का मतलब ये रहता, वो same लिपिड जो है उसको एक हाइड्रोफिलिक एंड भी है और उसको एक हाइड्रोफोबिक एंड भी है. ये फॉस्फोलिपिड इज एन एग्जांपल फॉर एम्फीफैटिक मॉलिक्यूल. मतलब इफ यू लुक क्लोजली टू अ फॉस्फोलिपिड, लेट्स सपोज आई ड्रॉ दैट फॉस्फोलिपिड मॉलिक्यूल. आपका फॉस्फोलिपिड मॉलिक्यूल ऐसा दिखता, ठीक है, यूं है. दिस पार्ट इज हाइड्रोफोबिक, पानी से डरता, इट डज नॉट लाइक वाटर. This part is the phosphate part which is hydrophilic. Okay. Because a single molecule has both hydrophilic and hydrophobic ends, that is why that molecule is called an amphipathic molecule. Okay. Now, membrane lipids generally are able to undergo lateral diffusion. Again, membrane lipids they are able to laterally diffuse. Translational movement बोलते हैं, उसको flexing भी बोलते हैं. The mechanism of this is, we'll discuss that mechanism some other day, but essentially membrane lipids जो है, they are able to move around quite easily, and they are asymmetrically distributed as well. There is no symmetry to their distribution. ऐसा नहीं है कि regular intervals पे present है, they are randomly present all throughout your cell membrane. ठीक है. Then we have membrane proteins. ठीक है, 3 different type of proteins रहते हैं आपके cell membrane में. So see here. One second. आपके सेल मेम्ब्रेन में 3 टाइप ऑफ प्रोटीन्स रहते हैं. वन इज इंटरनल प्रोटीन्स. ठीक है, इंटरनल प्रोटीन्स क्या रहते हैं? दीज आर डीप सीटेड. यहाँ पर एग्जांपल में दिया नहीं, इंटीग्रल प्रोटीन दिया. इंटीग्रल प्रोटीन और इंटरनल प्रोटीन्स आर डिफरेंट. ओके, इंटरनल प्रोटीन्स जो रहते हैं कंप्लीटली अंदर रहते हैं मेम्ब्रेन के. दे आर वेरी डीप सीटेड and they cannot be easily isolated. आप निकालना बहुत मुश्किल है वो सेल मेम्ब्रेन में से, right? Then you have transmembrane proteins. Transmembrane proteins are essentially आपके integral proteins are transmembrane proteins. These are also called integral proteins. Transmembrane proteins या integral proteins. They will extend from one side of the membrane to the other side. Generally, these are the largest proteins and they will act as carriers. ठीक है, कोई भी मॉलिक्यूल आया, अब जैसा मैं बोल रहा था आपको हाइड्रोफिलिक मॉलिक्यूल है, that fellow will not be able to pass through the membrane easily. अगर कोई water loving molecule है, that fellow will not be able to pass through easily. So what will happen is this protein will facilitate its movement. So imagine it this way. Imagine there is a big body of water. Okay? Imagine there is a big lake and you want to go from one end to the other under the water. ठीक है, अगर आप under water आप एक तरफ से दूसरी तरफ जाना चाह रहे हैं. Let us suppose you are building a tunnel, a big ass tunnel, wherein one end is opening on one end of the water body and the other end is opening to a different end of the water body. That tunnel is essentially how that protein is. Okay, it is helping people go from one end to the other. यहाँ पर ये proteins जो है, channel protein रह दो या carrier protein रह दो, these integral proteins help in movement of particles which are not able to enter through the cell membrane directly. Okay. Then we have peripheral proteins. Now, peripheral proteins are present on the surface of the cell membrane. They are very strongly bound to the cell membrane. Generally hydrogen bonding से या electrostatic interaction से they will be bound, and the position of the proteins usually remains constant. They will not move around here and there because they are linked to cytoplasmic components as well through cytoskeleton. We'll discuss what is cytoskeleton and what are cytoplasmic components. But essentially, because of cytoplasmic components and cytoskeleton, those proteins are not able to move around. So that is the second component. Then third component will be carbohydrates. Cell membrane में carbohydrate generally are present as glycoproteins. ठीक है, more often than not आपको oligosaccharides मिलते हैं, and ये carbohydrate जो है they will form a complex with a certain type of protein. जो carbohydrate molecule है, it will combine with certain small protein molecules and it will form a glycoprotein molecule. ये glycoprotein you can find on the surface of the cell. ठीक है, as you can see here, ये वाला, one second, this is a glycoprotein. ठीक है, so that is a combination of a carbohydrate and a protein essentially, right, making a glycoprotein. I hope you understood what are the three components of this thing, cell membrane. Lipids रहते, proteins रहते, and carbohydrates रहते. हर एक के एक function है, specific function. Okay. Then we have tight junctions. So tight junctions जो है, this is a tight junction. ये tight junction कैसा आया, कहाँ से आया? Imagine there are several cells which are present very close to each other. One second. ऐसा था क्या? नहीं. Okay, ठीक है, ऐसा कर देंगे. Imagine this is one cell. ठीक है, and imagine this is another cell. Same tissue में एक और cell है. Tight junctions are present in between those cells. They are making sure that nothing comes in between the cells. Generally, there will be a little bit of interstitial fluid. That is fine. But tight junctions will make sure that no components are coming in between cells. There is only a little bit of fluid and nothing else. It will not allow molecules to come in. अब ये टाइट जंक्शन को ओक्लूडिंग जंक्शन भी बोलते हैं. ठीक है, बिकॉज दे विल ब्लॉक. ओक्लूजन का मतलब ब्लॉकेज है, तो इन लोगों को ओक्लूडिंग जंक्शन भी बोलते हैं. इफ यू मैक्सिमाइज इट, ऐसा दिखता हो. ठीक है, now just concentrate on the tight junction, forget about the adherence junction for now. You can see on top there is tight junction, right? Now it is a type of junctional complex which is only present in vertebrates. Tight junction is not present in invertebrates, exclusively present only in vertebrates. Okay? There are three main type of proteins that will be found in tight junctions. एक है occludins, then there is claudins, then there are junction adhesion molecules. उसको JAMS बोलते हैं, junction adhesion molecules. ठीक है, ऊपर JAMs लिखे हुए हैं ना, those are junction adhesion molecules. These three proteins are making sure that this tight junction is so close knit and it is present so closely so that no other molecule can come inside. अब आप जैसा ऊपर देख सकते हैं same image में, there are a lot of small RBCs, there are several molecules on top. Those molecules are not able to enter in between the space in between the cells because of these tight junctions and because of these proteins. ये जो क्या बोलते हैं, बीच में proteins है, JAMs are proteins, claudins are proteins, occludins are proteins. They are not allowing anything to come inside. A tight junction essentially serves as a barrier. Okay? Barrier to free diffusion of water and solutes from extracellular compartment, on one side of the epithelial sheet to the other side. So it is not allowing any solute or any molecule to come from one side to the other. Only in between here there will be a little bit of fluid. Other than that, nothing else will be present. Okay. Especially, see, this will be very, very important when we talk about one type of barrier called blood-brain barrier. Okay. Now, inside your brain, जो blood vessels है, blood vessel की inner lining, अच्छा आप लोगों को cardiovascular system पढ़ा है? Have you all been taught cardiovascular system? Essentially, I want to know, have you all been taught about the structure of blood vessel? What are the layers of blood vessel and what is the structure of blood vessel? पढ़ा है क्या आपको या नहीं पढ़ा है? Have you all been taught about blood vessels or not?
No, sir.
You haven't been taught.
No.
Okay. ठीक है तो अच्छा एक काम करेंगे इवन इफ यू हैव नॉट बीन टॉट अबाउट ब्लड वेसल्स आपके ब्रेन में ऑब्वियसली इट नीड्स ब्लड एज वेल ठीक है वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू सेंड ब्लड इनटू योर ब्रेन अब जो ब्रेन के ब्लड वेसल्स रहते हैं उनका इनर लाइनिंग there is something called BBB or blood brain barrier which will make sure that no foreign particle except glucose and maybe a few specific proteins because specific components specific solutes are able to pass through ये क्या करते हैं let us suppose I take your brain like this ठीक है imagine this is someone's brain and यहाँ पर एक ब्लड वेसल रन हो रही ये बाहर से ऐसा अंदर रन हो रही और इसका ब्रांच ये है ठीक है अब मैं इतने से हिस्से पे अगर मैक्सिमाइज करा इमेजिन आई एम मैक्सिमाइजिंग दिस पर्टिकुलर एरिया ठीक है हाउ विल इट लुक ठीक है ये ब्लड वेसल है लेट अस सपोज दिस इज द ब्लड वेसल अब योर ब्लड वेसल विल हैव थ्री लेयर्स एसेंशियली you will have tunica externa, tunica media, and tunica interna. This is the external layer, tunica externa. This is tunica media. आप लोग एनाटॉमी पढ़े जब ज्यादा डिटेल में पढ़ते हैं बट जस्ट बेयर विद इट फॉर नाउ दिस इज ट्यूनिका इंटिमा दिस इज द इनरमोस्ट लेयर यहां पर ब्लड है आपका ठीक है ब्लड इज फ्लोइंग थ्रू दिस रीजन and you have those three layers. Now the endothelial layer, which is making up your tunica intima, especially in case of blood-brain barrier, for the blood vessels that are going inside your brain, they will have special tight junctions. These special tight junctions will make sure that nothing is able to pass through, nothing unnecessary is able to pass through your blood into the brain. Okay? Because your brain has to function normally and any damage to your brain can become permanent, your body will make sure that only glucose, see, for brain, only glucose is the main source of energy. ठीक है अपने बॉडी में दूसरे सोर्स ऑफ एनर्जी भी रहते बट फॉर ब्रेन ग्लूकोज विल एक्ट एज द मेन सोर्स ऑफ एनर्जी ग्लूकोज जाता ब्लड से ऑक्सीजन जाता ब्लड से एंड मे बी अ फ्यू सेलेक्टिव कंपोनेंट्स नथिंग एल्स विल बी एबल टू पास थ्रू दिस endothelial layer जो यहाँ पर endothelial layer will be this layer ठीक है यहाँ पर tunica intima का जो layer रहता उसको it is not essentially present in technically ये कैसा रहता मालूम you see an image it will be slightly easier but let us suppose I draw that slightly again imagine this is tunica externa this is tunica media okay and ये tunica interna है tunica interna जो है ऐसी रहती ठीक है अब ये tunica interna जो है let us suppose this ठीक है this area which are filled up those are the endothelial cells ये cells जो है किसी को अलाउ नहीं करते this is specifically because of tight junctions वहां पर टाइट जंक्शंस का काम क्या है दे आर नॉट अलाउइंग एनी अननेसेसरी मॉलिक्यूल टू पास थ्रू बिकॉज ऑफ विच द हेल्थ ऑफ योर न्यूरॉन्स आर मेंटेन्ड एनी बैक्टीरिया या वायरस normally is not able to pass through your blood until and unless that bacteria and virus is damaging your endothelium and it is very potent or very virulent only then it will be able to pass through into your brain or else BBB उसको BBB भी बोलते हैं blood brain barrier जो है उसको ट्रिपल बी बोलते हैं BBB blood brain barrier उसके थ्रू पास नहीं होता tight junctions are special sites they will make sure that they are blocking any solute from diffusing between cells and especially in between epithelium now tight junctions also hold cells together दो सेल जो है they are stuck together because of tight junction अगर tight junction नहीं था तो वो cells loosely packed रहते because of tight junction they are essentially imagine them as holding hands very tightly ठीक है because of special proteins your occludins your claudins and your junction adhesive molecules These are acting as the hands which are holding on to those cells. Okay, and it will also act as a barrier for any other molecules to not enter into that area. Okay, I will discuss about the cytoskeleton of this thing, cell membrane, tomorrow. I hope you are able to understand till here what are tight junctions and what are the proteins and what are the molecules that are present inside your cell membrane.